DeMello. Today I'm here with candidate for Ward 11, Mariam DeMello. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good. We had a great, beautiful day today. Were you able to get out at all?
A little bit.
Okay. So let's just start with the basics of, you can tell people who you are and why you're running and why you think people in Ward 11 should choose you.
Well, I can start off with this. I'm not an insider. I have no political experience. I've never ran for any type of office or, public position. Not even in high school. I just had no desire to be student body president or all that stuff you do in high school. I'm just your average lifelong Minneapolis resident. I love my city. I've worked for the city for many years. I don't want to have to move from the city because things are, getting a little shaky. And I love my home. This is my Ward 11 is my forever home, and I intend to continue being a lifelong resident in 11. And I'm just very concerned. I'm very concerned about what's going on with what's happening at the city council. And
so I want to get into that, but I want to ask so when you say you work for the city, what's your job?
So I worked for the city of Minneapolis for a number of years in various positions, from interning in R.T. Ryback's office to regulatory services to city attorney's office. And I went to work for the state for a little bit as a clerk, a judicial clerk, and certified student attorney. Now I'm actually with Mayor Melvin Carter's office, and I'm a part of his administration.
Okay. So you go into St. Paul every day?
Yes.
All right.
It's quite a commute.
And has he been kind of an inspiration for you to run? Okay.
Oh, yeah. He's just so talented and creative, and when he has big issues, he's just pulling everybody together and just addresses them head on.
Well, maybe later we can talk a little bit about the big rent control overturn they just had.
That was a big one.
And I guess it's great to hear you're a lifelong resident of Ward 11, you said, or at least you've lived there for a while.
I've lived in 8. I grew up in 8. I lived in Uptown for a little bit, did the college thing.
Okay.
And then I just landed in 11. I wanted to be near my parents. I wanted to be near the lake, the creek, and just landed in 11. I lived in Minneapolis all my life. I did a fair number of traveling, and just Minneapolis is such a great city for activities. Our standard of living is relatively high compared to other cities this size, and I just want to keep it that way.
I ask about you living there is kind of a trick question, although not really, because there's been a lot of, several candidates have been accused of not living in the wards they say they live in, but I think that's not something that you're going to be accused of, right?
Well, I have been accused of it, surprisingly,
really?
But I do live in 11.
Okay.
And I tell people, when I encounter this question, at least I don't have a stalker, because if I did have a stalker, they would know that, I wake up in the morning in Ward 11, go to St. Paul, come home to my house in Ward 11, go do activities, go to the gym, come back, and I lay my head to rest at night in Ward 11. Okay.
Well, so who's accused you then of not living there?
Just some random people on Twitter.
Okay. All right. So you're on Twitter, I guess. You have a Twitter account?
I have a Twitter account. After the whole, call it X thing, after that transition of Twitter, it just kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth, and I just don't want to support them as much. But I do realize that, running a campaign, you need to have that, outlet to reach constituents and residents and people that are, wondering who the heck you are.
Yeah. Well, I switched to Blue Sky. I don't know if you have a Blue Sky account.
Yeah. We talked about it in our team.
I recommend it. I do. Okay, so you talked a little bit about, worried about the city being shaky. So sort of when you say, why do you think that Ward 11 people should choose you?
Well, again, I love my ward. I love my city. I really resonate with the people, my neighbors that live in 11. I feel like we share the same values and we want the same thing for our city. Deciding to run was a very difficult choice because, again, running for political office of any kind was not something I sought after and never thought I would do.
Was there any particular one event or something that motivated you to get in the race?
Well, I'm also on the Minneapolis Charter Commission, so I see all the kind of background stuff of what's going on in the city.
Can I give you a list of things I'd like to change?
Sure. I'll keep it under advisement. I'll bring it up to my teammates on the Charter Commission. It's just, I was watching the race closely, and I was waiting for another candidate that shared the same values I shared about the future of our city, and that didn't happen. No one aside from Jameson, who is a really nice guy, stepped up to the plate and just had a similar vision and value system that me and my neighbors had. So I was like, okay, it's kind of now or never. There's only one person running. It's an open seat. These are all the issues I care about. I want to be here. Mm-hmm. Let's make it happen.
Have you ever had a chance to talk to Emily Koski?
We have, yeah.
Okay.
A few times.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned values and the values of your neighbors. So how does that translate into the top 3 priorities of your campaign?
So number 1 is public safety. I know after the pandemic and the uprising following the murder of George Floyd, a lot of residents just feel a little shaky about, groups in the city that want to defund the police or not support our police department. And it's something that is of concern to me, my family, my neighbors. We want to be able, if something bad happened, we want to be able to call the police and have someone respond in a timely fashion. So that public safety, and that's not just police, that's street lighting, that's making sure our streets are safe. My best friend, Mulaney, if you go to my webpage, you'll see it. There's a story featured about her. We were out at Nightingale's in Minneapolis on a Sunday night. I think it was the day before Martin Luther King, it's why we were out on a Sunday night. And she, on her way to her car, she got hit by a car and had a very traumatic, life-changing injury.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
And then post that event, just watching kind of the city not being able to investigate Mulaney's accident with detail and precision. And when we inquired, why isn't the city doing more, or why isn't the police department doing more, we get a response saying we just don't have enough investigators. That blew my mind. Mm-hmm. So I put that in the public safety category. Sure.
I know they've I think made a big push to get civilian investigators. Yep. Mm-hmm. And I think the logic behind that is so that they can do things and not take up time of, sworn in law officers. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do. So when Mulaney was hit, my friends and I assumed the role of civilian investigators, and that was really hard and really challenging. We just asked for businesses in the area, do you have any photos? We would go out, look for any cars that, matched the description of the car that hit and ran her, or, hit and ran. So it's really hard mm-hmm. to, be a civilian investigator, and I would want to know more about what kind of training or authority that these civilian investigators are receiving and able for them to help the police department do their job.
Right. I mean, can people just ignore them because they're
Right.
not police
Right.
kind of thing?
Yeah. Is it kind of be like a citizen's arrest kind of thing too? That's when I think of civilian investigators, is it like citizen arrest-ish?
So that makes me think too of, a lot of people when they talk about public safety, they also talk about sort of non-armed force like safety ambassadors and violence interrupters and stuff. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on their role in the public safety discussion, because I too wonder, like, how does that work if you do encounter someone that's being violent or you're not the police officer, so you can't like restrain them or anything like that. But
I'm pretty out and about in my community, and I see a lot of people in crisis. Just the other day, outside of the sewer co-op, there was a woman in crisis, and she wasn't violent, but she was not well, and she was, flaring her hands and screaming to the top of her lungs, and the manager of the store came out, and I'm like, do you need me to call someone? And he's like, well, I don't want to call the police because I don't want to escalate things. She doesn't seem like she's dangerous to anyone. I just don't feel like getting the police involved is appropriate. And I totally understood where he was coming from. And I'm like, well, there's these
behavioral crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not police, but they can help. And I think their role is so important.
Right.
Again, it's all about, do they have the proper training to handle that situation? And do they have the tools when they come to a situation that seems nonviolent? Because usually you can assess, but if there's any indication that it is going to get violent, do they have the tools and resources to get MPD in?
Right, yeah. Any other parts of public safety you wanted to mention, or
housing? I think housing is, it falls along in the category of public safety to me. Encampments. I know we haven't seen as many encampments in the city, and I'm happy about that, because living outside is not dignified housing for a human being. So I want to make sure that people that are experiencing homelessness have options other than living in a tent by the park. Maybe we can invest more into low barrier shelters or tiny homes or something that we can provide individuals to promote more public safety in our community that are living outside to kind of get the resources they need.
Weren't they going to build, and maybe I'm getting the ward wrong, a second Avivo shelter? I thought it was in Ward 11, but I could have that wrong.
I don't know if that's going to happen further. I mean, I've heard about it, but I haven't heard any new developments of it.
I do know they have on that, kind of right down from Bachman's on Lindale, they had those, I don't know if they were full-on SRO or just individual hotel rooms or how they were categorized, but they were definitely for low income, and somehow they all burnt down. Yep.
So they're still in disrepair, sadly. And again, maybe that's another thing I want to touch on is how fast, the city council and the mayor can work on developing the city. I mean, a week or two ago I drove by and it's still burnt down.
Yeah, it looks like it did.
So it's really upsetting. But again, not to take up too much time on public safety, but it is really the big umbrella issue that myself and people in 11 across the city feel like is a very important issue. I really want to invest in youth violence prevention programs and ambassadors and mentorship programs. It's really interesting because there was like this downward trend in violence and homicides in the beginning of the year, But, from my experience working as a student certified attorney at the Ramsey County Attorney's Office, I did bail arguments and first appearance hearings. Crime goes up in the summer,
Sure.
significantly.
I just wrote about this. You probably didn't read it, but I just wrote a story on Wednesday about a 14-year-old boy that was shot and killed downtown, and kind of said, these things go up. And my particular thing is, I don't know how, with so many guns on the street, we can, I'm like open to trying anything to stop the spread of guns, and, so.
Yeah, and it's a major issue that we need to keep having these conversations. What do we do with our at-risk youth? Mm-hmm. What do we do with children who are stealing cars? Or what do we do with children that have a firearm in their possession and pointed at someone else? It's a hard conversation. It involves not just the city, but the county, the state. And I really believe in mentorship programs. I did Step Up when I was in high school. I did the Urban Scholars program in college. It's just we need to give kids opportunities to not go down a road of no return when they're not at school. Yeah. When they're not, when they're not at school, what are these kids doing? Yeah,
that was one of the main sort of thrusts of what I was writing, is there's not much for kids to do, particularly teenagers, when they're not in school or at home, right? Where do they go, kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with one of my girlfriends. I'm like, so what are your kids doing this summer? And then she was like, well, all these summer programs are so expensive. I don't know what to do with them. I can't afford camp anymore. So it's really sad. But again, I believe there are solutions that work and that we should invest in as a city.
Well, the parks are definitely such a great resource, and I know my kids have spent a lot of time at Pearl, which is right in the heart of your ward, and it seems like those pickleball courts over there near Lake Nokomis are packed all the time.
Oh, all the time. I go to work in the morning. I go down the past Nokomis and through the River Road. I call it the River Road, and morning it's packed, and when I come back from work late, it's still packed. Right. And then when I go for a walk in the evening, around 8-9 o'clock, it's still packed. So it's good that they're being utilized.
Yeah, I don't know if that's I don't know if pickleball for teenagers is the solution, but certainly the great rec centers have ping pong and all kinds of different activities and basketball and stuff like that. So.
And it is really sad. And I know Park Board is different than City of Minneapolis. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of staying in my lane, but also helping where I can. If you look at all the youth programming that the Park Board had in the 80s and all the options they had for kids in the 80s and all the free meals they had for kids back in the 80s, and you look at what's available now, it's really shocking how much it's been reduced. Strange, huh? So,
is that because of budget, you think?
I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, public safety. What's number 2 priority for you?
Number 2, okay, so in my ward specifically, and I can resonate with this from my parents. My parents, moved here in the 70s from the Middle East and own their home ever since, and they don't want to leave Minneapolis either. My residents are really concerned about the rise of their property taxes. Mm-hmm. That's been kind of one of the second ongoing theme of this campaign saga. My property taxes went up by thousands of dollars. I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. I feel like I'm being pushed out of my home that, I invested in for 30 plus years. What's the future for me looking like? Yeah. And it's hard. It's really, really hard because, again, things are getting expensive. To maintain the street, to fill a pothole, to provide really good city services is getting expensive. But then again, when you see all this mismanagement of money happening at the city level, you're kind of like, what the heck, you know? So that really frustrates me. It frustrates my neighbors. It frustrates my family. We shouldn't punish people that have paid off their mortgages and invested in the city and lived in the city for 30 plus years by just, not giving them what they're, paying for in city services.
So just to get a little bit more detailed there, are there any examples you have of where you think that the city's kind of mismanaging the money, or they could be prioritizing it differently?
Well, there was this whole story in the paper about the crime prevention, the violence interrupters being paid for work that they essentially didn't do. So that was in the
double
paper.
Billing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's something that should have never happened. And that's something with the proper oversight, the proper management and training of city staff could have been avoided. Mm-hmm. So, again, when you have this management of money happening and then we're raising property taxes, it's just, it just doesn't make sense. How about we manage this money, taxpayer dollars more efficiently, and then not have to raise property taxes so significantly? And I'm not against taxes. Taxes make our, city work. But again, it's just like, I'm also very concerned of pricing people out of their neighborhoods.
And I think Ward 11, at least as I think of it, is probably a little bit just thinking of the different demographics. I mean,
it's the
skews a little bit
plus
older
crowd.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be I can see how that would be a really high priority in Ward 11. And so number 3?
Again, infrastructure and city services. People are just tired of seeing their streetlights broken. Again, that ties into public safety. Having lighting at night prevents crime. Just, making sure that our roads are plowed timely. I'm also on Nextdoor, for better or for worse. And a few weeks ago, this one of my neighbors posted a video, like a Ring doorbell video of just 3 rats coming out of nowhere and playing in her yard. And that freaked me out. I've never seen a rat in Minneapolis prior to these past 3 years. If you asked me, 3-4 years ago, does Minneapolis have rats? I'm like, no, I haven't seen any. And now I just see them all the time. And that makes me think there's something broken with our sewer line or something not working.
Well, I'll tell you what I see. I don't think I've seen a rat, but the raccoons are something else.
Yeah.
I mean, they are big and brave.
Oh, yeah.
And they will, and they're not even I have a dog, and they're not even intimidated by the dog.
And they will hurt your dog.
Yeah.
It's just,
they travel in packs.
They do. But again, that's a city infrastructure issue. What's broken that needs to be fixed? Our old service lines, with all this weird stuff going at the federal government, it's are we still going to be able to replace our aging infrastructure? Are we able to still keep our water quality relatively high? Those are the issues I'm very concerned about. And again, the issues that the neighbors bring up to me.
Yeah, it does seem like, we could face a lot of changes in the next 4 years, and kind of being very cognizant of spending, is probably pretty high on people's radar right now. The
thing I love about Minneapolis and Minnesota is we have a lot of philanthropic organizations and very generous people. So not every state is like that. But again, it's donors can only help so much. So again, it's just my main priority as a would-be city council member is how are we spending our taxpayer dollars?
All right. Well, so then that kind of segues into my next question here about so the current council, are there any specific policies that you have disagreed with that they've passed? And then are there any that you have liked that they've passed?
There are a few. I'm going to start with the likes.
Okay.
I was really happy when the city council banned the rent algorithms.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the technical term of it, but basically the algorithms that set prices for rent. I'm kind of a nerd, so I do a lot of research and reading about what other cities are doing. It's also part of my job with the city of St. Paul. I'm so happy that the city council was like, no, this is not going to happen. That's probably one of the most sound resolutions they've passed in a while.
And the problem I see with some of that stuff, though, is the enforcement. Like, if you are an out-of-state landlord and you're using that software, because some of the out-of-state people in particular own lots and lots of apartments.
Right.
And so I'm sure they're using something that is tracking how much they're getting for every single unit. And then it's a matter of saying, well, what's the average? What could I charge? Like, at what point does it become an algorithm as opposed to like someone just doing it themselves? But also, like, how does the city council know? Like, who knows that they're doing it? How do you stop them?
Right. And again, a lot of people don't think about this, but enforcement is part of running a city.
Yeah.
Like, regulatory services. I used to be an intern there, and it's like, kind of that's the bread and butter of what the city does. If someone's not, taking care of their home, or if someone has questionable business practices, or if someone's, discriminating a certain group of individuals based off of something, it's just like, as a city, you need to pour resources in fixing the problem, and part of that is enforcement.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that's one plus that you liked. What else?
Two negatives that come to mind, and again, the negatives are hard to talk about without offending anybody. So I hope no individual council member takes this personally. But the safe spaces outside ordinance that passed late last year, again, that really made me question how the city council and how the city is trying to address the issue of homelessness and unhoused individuals. My biggest thing, again, is housing with dignity. And living outside, as I said earlier, is not a dignified way of how, for a human being to be housed. So instead, I just feel like the safe spaces outdoor ordinance deters people.
So let's describe that a little bit more, because I thought that was still something to be decided, but you're saying there was an actual ordinance. But what is it for people who don't know? I think it's meant to. If I'm not, I might be incorrect, but I think it's being researched. I think they're slow to put it out there because they know it's going to be controversial. But it's basically saying we're going to set aside spots in the city with like fencing and security and showers and facilities for people to remain outdoors, right? Is that your understanding?
I understood it a little differently.
Okay.
I understood it as, and maybe that's a component of it that I might, need to go back and read up on. I understood it as just allowing people to be outside and not really tearing down encampments. And again, I hate the fact that we have to get this far where the city has to come in, spend tons of money to tear down someone's community. But again, it's not a safe place for people to be living outside. So it just, for me, when I read it, it just promoted people, not incentivized, but it promoted people that didn't have housing to live outside. Instead of like, okay, we want to help you get the resources you need so you don't have to live outside. So that's the kind of the angle I looked at.
I mean, I definitely think it's an issue that will come up again, and you're likely to be voted on. I think another part of it is based on what they did in Duluth, where they set aside like parking lots and allow people to live in their cars, or basically create a secured parking lot for them to live in.
And it's illegal in Minnesota to live in your car, last time I checked, so I don't know.
Oh, it is?
I think so, per Minnesota statute, but...
Okay, I did not know that.
That's, I think, I'm dating myself a little bit. So, yeah, again, living in your car, you don't have electricity, you don't have running water. It's also not a suitable way of living.
Yeah.
So I just really wish that we would, instead of devoting our time into ordinances like safe spaces outside, really focus in on finding more permanent solutions. Another ordinance that I had a hard time, or not ordinance, resolution that I had a hard time grappling with was the ordinance around Gaza and just Israel. And that one was hard for me because my father's Palestinian. He left Jerusalem to come to Minnesota, of all places, because life for Palestinians is awful in Israel. And, it's hard because this is an issue that is really, deep and personal to me. But at the same time, I'm also very realistic that Minneapolis can't save Gaza or Palestinians. We can welcome them, we can welcome immigrants into our community, but just the ceasefire resolution I did not feel was an appropriate use of time, energy, and resources. It takes a lot of energy, time, and resources to introduce a resolution.
Yeah.
And then for it to go to the mayor's office and for mayor's staff and mayor to review it, and then for to veto and it back to council and all this, it's a significant use of staff time that I feel like, okay, if Bill Clinton couldn't figure this problem out and we're still talking about this issue, what's going on in Israel and Palestine, how the heck does the city council think that we're going to be able to have a significant impact on what's happening in the Middle East?
Yeah, I have a hard time understanding the motivation there, as opposed to, focusing on city issues. So it does make me wonder where you would be on the rent control, because you work with Carter. That was a big story in St. Paul just recently. Frankly, I don't read the news about St. Paul. I heard that much.
It's interesting because St. Paulites don't really read the news about Minneapolis.
Well, it's just even keeping up with Minneapolis news is a lot. But I did see that maybe you could fill in the gaps, but they overturned rent control 4-3. So what does that mean, and how do you interpret it?
So things are still moving with that, and I'm not trying to avoid your question, but with what's going on in St. Paul in terms of the ordinance, things are still cooking, and I kind of want to leave it at that there.
Okay.
But I will say, in St. Paul, and I was with Mayor Carter's administration when that originally passed, the rent stabilization measure was something that the voters wanted. It wasn't something that Mayor Carter's administration or Mayor Carter was inclined to go into effect because, again, the research and studies show across the country that rent control generally doesn't work, unfortunately. And it's hard on developers. It is also hard on, in some respects, landlords. It can be hard on renters too, because there's all these loopholes in certain policies. So it's a very complex issue. And again, it goes back to the housing crisis we're kind of dealing with right now in terms of meeting our growing population and the supply and demand. And again, just making sure there's more affordable housing in the city, in both cities. I mean, personally, I'm sick of seeing all these luxury condos go up because that's not what families live in. It's not what people, making less than 50K live in. And that's what's being developed, and it just drives me crazy.
So do you have any thoughts on an alternate solution? Like what sort of housing, like what housing stock would you like to see in Ward 11? Like what sort of things would you support to help increase housing?
So zoning is also something I, care deeply about, and like sensible zoning is something I've really dove into. And again, I want to preserve the charm and character of Ward 11. I don't want to put fourplexes or fiveplexes on a single home city lot. It doesn't make sense. But at the same time, there are spaces in Ward 11 and across the city where it makes sense to develop some form of multifamily housing. I'm a big fan of cooperatives, but that's kind of a different thing. But it's hard because even though I'm not in, this is not in Ward 11, it's in 8, George Floyd Square comes up amongst Ward 11 residents. It comes up quite frequently too. And the Super America, right across where George Floyd was murdered, people are like, what do we do with that now that the city owns it? People want it to be a community center. People want it to be a memorial. Personally, I think it should be some type of memorial / multifamily housing unit. It's on a bus line, or was on a bus line. It doesn't make sense for it to be a community center because you have Sabathany down one way, and then you have Pillsbury House Theater along the other way. People in the area need housing. There's a lot of homelessness in that area where maybe we can just put them in housing if that works. It's like if you want to be in the neighborhood, we're not pushing you out. We're just, there's solutions to these problems.
Well, if you are elected, I think you might get to vote on it because it's not getting decided before November. I mean, it's. I think that's one of the hot spots that people look at in the city, and when they think that we have a hard time getting things done here in Minneapolis because it's still ongoing. It's 5 years, and the mayor and the city council are still at odds over it and whether or not it should. And personally, I feel like they did a lot of community engagement. People wanted it to continue to be a street. The business owners around there said we want it to be a street, and certain council members came in and said, no, we're going to keep thinking about this.
Which is crazy to me because it's like these are the people that actually have to go through that thoroughfare every day. And these are the businesses that are being hurt and have sued the city, on a regular basis. So it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, maybe if we have a George Floyd, Memorial Day, event honoring his life and honoring what happened, and we got permit to block off that street for a day or two. I mean, I would entertain that idea, but to block it off completely against what the residents and business owners want is just baffling to me. Yeah,
it seems like it's just continuing the pain, really, for that area.
I know not a lot. I know a few people that lived in the area. A lot is, what do you mean by a lot? They've moved. I talked to a lady, too, when that was happening, because, again, my parents, 43rd and Columbus, is not far from George Floyd Square. That's where I grew up, and that's where I stay, they're where they stay. And I was with them during the George Floyd uprising, because it just was like, okay, they're elderly, maybe they shouldn't be home alone. And it's just like, the impact on that neighborhood. And back to the lady I spoke with, she was like, yeah, I moved to my cabin for that summer. My
Right.
cabin has no running water, and I just left because I didn't feel safe. So it's hard on the residents there.
Indeed, it is. Well, so again, a lot of people are looking to Fry to come up with some answers, and the city council has to work with him on those answers. He's, of course, running. So I'm curious, do you think he deserves a third term? And if so, is there common ground that you think you could work with him on?
I do think he deserves a third term. Again, we've been through a lot in the last few years, the pandemic, George Floyd, another term of Trump. It's not easy to be council person, and it's definitely not easy to be mayor. So there are definitely things, not personal differences, well, maybe personal differences, but there are differences I have with Mayor Fry in terms of certain ways he's interacted with the Charter Commission. And again, I don't want to dwell on the past, but I wish he did call the National Guard a little bit earlier. That kind of just made me question a few things. But I do think he deserves another shot at being mayor again. And again, life is relative. You kind of have to look at what other options do we have. And the other candidates are not as experienced, I think, as Mayor Fry. Obviously, he's mayor, so it's a different playing field. So yeah, that's just something.
So what are some of the projects or programs that he's put out there that you would want to work with him on?
So he had his budget address on Monday. I think it was Monday, or
the State of the City.
Sorry, I'm thinking of our budget address down in August. We're already starting to prepare for that State of our City address. And I watched it. I went through it, like the transcript as well, and just the update we received. Well, if you're on part of the newsletter that you're signed up to receive, and I think he's doing what he can given the circumstances. I'm glad to see that more people are being recruited and hired to be police officers. That's, in a relatively few years, those numbers are up is great. I just kind of want to see how long, retention stays with those police officers and what resources, not just police, but for city staff in general, are afforded by the mayor's office to keep people employed and keep talent in the city.
Yeah, I think, of course, that's one of the concerns, right? And I must say, some of these city jobs pay really well.
Yes.
So you hope you have the most qualified people in there. Well, great. How about, telling me a little bit about your summer plans, what you like doing in the summer, trying to give Ward 11 residents a little insight into, some of the things you do, hobbies or fun things for the summer?
So again, I love Minneapolis because of our parks and our trails. So I'm always outside when I can be. Obviously, running for office kind of reduces that time significantly. But when I get a chance, I'm outside in the summertime. I bike, swim, rollerblade. Actually, on Monday, I think it was Monday, the days are just kind of coming together. It was a really unseasonably warm day where it was 80 in the beginning of May, and it just freaked me out a bit because I'm like, oh my God, climate change, and then what's going to happen in mid-July? I was out rollerblading on Nokomis, and I fell very hard.
Oh, okay.
Very, very hard, and I love rollerblading. But, it was a really hard fall. Had I not been wearing the appropriate, headgear and wrist protection, I probably would have been hospitalized for really severe. And my wrists would have been broken. I'm surprised I'm here, honestly, because it was just like...
And rollerblades is a little old school, right? I mean, you don't see a lot of rollerbladers anymore. I think probably for that exact reason.
Yeah.
You know?
It's made a comeback probably after the Barbie movie came out like a few summers ago.
I didn't
think
see
people
that.
started
Do they
coming
do some
up.
rollerblading
They did
in
some
there?
rollerblading.
Okay.
There's, again, supporting small businesses in Uptown.
I know. I love your shoes. So you were telling me earlier about getting those in Uptown.
Yeah.
Right?
So to kind of piggyback on rollerblading, there's a small roller rink where CB2 was in Uptown. Again, another fun activity that I want people to know is around. But yeah, just Uptown is another example of how sad it is that the city is not really being super efficient with, revitalizing some of the spaces that need some TLC.
Do you have any thoughts on how to help Uptown? I mean, I know there's the Uptown Association is working on a business improvement district, but and there's some kind of like, I think, these kind of storefront grants that they did downtown. They're trying to get some of those in, but do you have any other ideas besides those?
I know parking is also a big thing.
Yeah.
You need parking to get people to your stores. You need to get stores to Uptown. Back to my shoes. My shoes are from John Fluvog, who used to be located on the corner across from the library and next to the theater. They left after the riots, and again, just bring more of those businesses that we love that, have unique offerings that, you can't get elsewhere to Uptown.
Have you had a chance to, I haven't been into a couple of the new businesses that have opened. I should get over there.
I think there's a Korean skincare. I poked around, was it last week there when I was at the roller rink?
Okay.
So yeah, it's, they need more support like all businesses do. We just need to keep, incentivizing businesses to come and make Uptown their home.
So how often do you do the roller skating rink?
Oh my gosh. So I do the roller skating rink once a week. Try to do it once a week. So far, so good. Rollerblade as much as I can in the evenings before it gets dark. I just love being active. I love being with my family. I love being active.
So how do you find time to do all the campaigning and all that stuff working full time? I mean, that has to be tough.
It's very tough. I have really early mornings and really late evenings. I probably should be getting more sleep than I do now. But my team has been amazing, and that's something I want to touch on. They've just been so great. They're all volunteers. They all None of them have political experience. They're all mostly small business owners. I have one of my other teammates did HR for a while. So all volunteers, nobody's being paid to kind of help me get my message out there. So yeah, we're just rolling up our sleeves, getting together as often as we can. Weekends are pretty full. Evenings are pretty full. Again, I wish I had...
This should have, I guess this question should have been up earlier when I asked about you living in Ward 11. You're going for, I assume you're going for the DFL endorsement.
Yep.
Correct? Okay.
That's the goal.
So that's a big, and that's May 31st, right?
May 31st, yeah.
All right. So tell me, how should people learn more about you if they have questions or anything? You have a website or email? Or
I have a website. I have an email, mariam.demello@outlook.com. Just want to keep it simple. I probably shouldn't say this, but my personal number is 612-432-6005. If you do have a question, please reach out. I will try to answer.
And the website is?
Mariam.DeMello Mariam.DeMello, I'm blanking. Mariam.DeMello.com.
Okay. Well, I will double check it
Thank
when I
you.
write
I'm
up
just kidding.
I wanted to ask you one final question. Are there any endorsements that you'd like people to know about?
So far, right now, I'm really actively seeking endorsements from my neighbors and business owners in Ward 11 and people that actually know me and have worked with me. I think it's really weird when you get endorsements from people or organizations that may not know you. Mm-hmm. I'm very picky about who chooses to endorse me. I was graced with a women winning endorsing me 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's great.
That is an organization that I love, and they're so good at what they're doing. They're organized. They're very supportive. Women supporting women is huge, and I'm immensely grateful for their support. But again, endorsements and raising money are a touchy subject. Some endorsements, come with strings attached, and that makes me uncomfortable.
And are you comfortable giving an example of what you mean by that, or?
I mean, well, some unions, I'm not going to say which unions, will endorse you, but then expect you to vote a certain way or to push certain policy positions once you are elected with the help of their support. And that just doesn't sit well with me. I want to be independent. I want to do what my residents think, we should do at the city level. Same thing with money. Asking for money has been probably the most challenging thing thus far.
It's hard to do.
It's really hard to do. And, people have been generous. People have donated without me even asking. But again, I'm just really cautious of, asking for a lot of money, well, whatever this maximum is, from individuals that may want something in return. It drives me nuts that local grassroots elections get so freaking expensive.
Yeah.
And I grew up poor. I work with part of my job is also I work with constituents that are also a lot of times experiencing financial hardships. Like today, I talked to a lady on the phone at my job in St. Paul who was getting evicted and had no money. So the amount of money that we as a society, don't get me started on the federal level, but at the local level, are willing to put tens of thousands of dollars into local campaigns is sickening to me. And not more of a bigger issue, but I wish that as an American society, we had more election rules that some European countries have around, like caps, how much you can raise, how much time you have to campaign, et cetera, et cetera.
I don't know if you've ever looked at what New York does, but I'm kind of a fan of that, where they match. There's a public match, right? Mm-hmm. So and I think you have to. I don't know if there's a limit.
See, it's like, what's the cap on that match, too?
Yeah, but let's say they'll go up to 200,000. So if you raise, 200,000, the city would give you 200,000. But if you go over that and raise like 400,000, I'd have to look more into how it works. But at least they do have that, and I feel like that would benefit some candidates that aren't, say, able to tap into big funds or choose not to for whatever reason. So
yeah, and it just limits about who can run. I mean, the fact that there was only one candidate for a very long time in Ward 11 just blew my mind. I don't want money to be a thing. In my perfect world, I don't want money to be a factor that deters qualified candidates from running in any type of political office. Well,
good. All right. Well, congratulations on that endorsement then, and good luck.
Thank you.
Bye.